double-bassist. I freelance in the city, play with quite a few of the jazz setups here. Syncopation, drift, and a bunch of other people. I've been doing this for the past 3 or 4 years, and that's how I've been supporting myself. I actually started playing the electric bass, and if you get interested in jazz, then it's sort of a natural progression. Also, the fact that no one else played it in the city just made me want to do it more. And you know, 3 years ago, when I said I wanted to play this instrument, it was the stupidest thing to come out of my mouth because there were no instruments and there were no players. But you know, now 3 years later, there's so much work to go around, and every time someone wants a double bassist, it's awesome. It's great. It's a good life. Predominantly, I end up playing just jazz. There are lots of different sort of subdivisions in jazz. Like there's sort of Afro jazz, and there's swing and bebop. So there's a lot of room to play around. I wouldn't do it too often, but a bunch of my friends, they play more pop sort of music, and sometimes I play the double bass with them, but it's definitely not first preference. I don't play the electric bass at all, so it's just if someone calls me, then they call me for that. I have a real fascination for the piano, mostly because it's kind of like the mother instrument. Everything else, if you study how to play the piano, it changes your sort of perception of harmony, and it's nice that way. Being a bass player, I really like the drums too, and for bass, that's the cool thing. It's kind of a halfway road between like a rhythmic instrument like the drums and a harmonic instrument like the piano. Never really been that fascinated with saxophones like most people also. Yes, I actually learned to play this form of music with this piano trio called the trio. This sort of showed me how things work. And then I was living in Japan for a year where I spent time in different clubs watching people. When I came back, I started playing with this quartet called Drift and we're a trio. And I still play with them all the time, and those guys are like family to me. I also started playing with this band called Syncopation this year, and another great band. I'm so spoiled in the city. I get to play with just like the best musicians the city has to offer, and it's great. So grateful for that. It's a bit of both. I'm definitely spoiled. I knew, if there were lots of much better double bass players, which I know there are in different parts of the world, I'm sure there'd be a lot less work. But I try and not let that get to me. Like I try and not let that stop me from practicing. And it's not an excuse to stop working hard, but at the same time I shouldn't. I don't let myself feel bad about it. There are enough players. Most of them are just really old. I mean, they've been playing since way before I was born, and then well into their 60s and 70s now. So there are about 2 or 3 guys who play the double bass, and there are a whole lot of expats who do. A lot of Japanese guys, a lot of American guys here who play this instrument. They just haven't really come out yet, but they will, and it'll be awesome. Definitely a niche. There are no two ways about it. In a place like Delhi, it'll always surprise you. There'll always be people at the events where where you're least expecting people to come up, and someone comes up and they have this really definite idea of what kind of jazz they like, and they've heard stuff and they've been to clubs and they know the big names and they know what you're doing. And at the same time, you have nights where you think you're playing somewhere where people will appreciate you, and there's just no one there, or it's just dead to the crowd. So the fact that it's a niche makes it classy, makes there's a lot of work coming in because of the fact that there are not very many people who are into it. But at the same time, it's definitely developing. There's so many more kids that are playing, and there so many more bands that are popping up. So there's a scene that's being cultivated. It's going to take time. I think things have changed a lot over the past 6 or 7 years. When I was learning how to play, most schools didn't have music programs. There weren't teachers. There weren't those many there weren't those many schools outside of, you know, like the public schools. There weren't private schools where you could learn music. There was just a Delhi School of Music. But now they're just, you know, there's schools popping up and they have like this jazz-oriented education, and you know, we got places like Performers Collective and Blue Note Academy. Most of my friends work at schools or run schools, and it's such a great time to be playing. Like you couldn't really find instruments when I was learning how to play, and you know, now there's shops everywhere, so it's almost like a flood of resources. Initially, they just thought that it was going to be a hobby, you know, that I was just goofing around, and you know, I'll drop it or I'll just pick it up after a few months and drop it again. It took a few years before they started to realize that I was doing it seriously. By the time I was out of college, by the time I was back from Japan, and I was really pushing, and it started to, you know, it started to become evident that this was not something that was going to go away, and it was finding its way to the center of how things were happening. And so they are very supportive, and that is something that is very cool. So I'm grateful for that. It really depends how you go about it. There are seasons. When the season's on, for instance, right now, through the winter months, you can make as much as, you know, as a doctor, or a really senior journalist, or anyone for that matter, if you put yourself out there enough. And then in the summer, you get to flirt with poverty. Probably that you don't enjoy every gig you play, and there are going to be days where it's going to be efforted and concerted, but you still have to make it through, and every note that you play sounds really deliberate, and you know, then nights where you're going to have more bad nights than good nights. It's almost like a standard rule, you know, and it's just recovering from those good nights, recovering from those bad nights, and just being able to leave them behind and not bring them back home and not take them to the next performance, and just keeping your head clear, that takes a toll. I think the most exciting thing for me is definitely when you have a really great night, and especially when you're playing jazz and you're improvising properly, and everyone in your band is really listening, and everyone's listening to each other, and you're really interacting. It's like a new language, and it's kind of like everyone's talking in it, and you finish playing and everyone's feeling great, and you're closer to the people than you were before you started, and it's amazing. I love that. That for me, those pure moments of sound, that's what I play for, where everyone's just connected. It's just perfect.